Imagine for a moment that the Earth is suddenly hit by an invisible force so powerful that it can disrupt our very way of life in a matter of minutes. The lights flicker, communication systems fail, and the transportation industry grinds to a halt as planes are grounded, satellites are knocked offline, and entire cities fall into a blackout. This is not a scene from a dystopian movie, but something that nearly became a reality in May 2024. A massive solar storm, unlike any the world has experienced in the past few decades, struck our planet with devastating potential. Although we were lucky this time, only experiencing minor regional disruptions, the event served as a powerful reminder of how vulnerable we are to the unpredictable forces of the sun. For those who were paying attention, the May 2024 geomagnetic storm was an ominous warning of the potential dangers that loom on the horizon. A powerful reminder that solar storms can strike at any time, with consequences that could change the course of history. In May 2024, Earth was caught in the crossfire of one of the most intense geomagnetic storms in recent memory. Triggered by violent solar flares and coronal mass ejections, CMEs, giant bursts of solar wind and magnetic fields from the sun's outer layers, this storm caused a wave of charged particles to rush toward Earth at incredible speeds. These particles, which travel at speeds of hundreds of kilometers per second, interact with the Earth's magnetic field, creating what are known as geomagnetic storms. The consequences of such storms can be catastrophic for modern civilization, which relies heavily on satellite communication, GPS systems, power grids, and telecommunications. And although this particular storm caused only minor disruptions, the potential for disaster was real. The sun is an incredibly powerful and dynamic star. It is not a constant, stable force in the sky but rather a massive ball of hot plasma that constantly undergoes turbulent activity. It is in this activity, particularly the formation of sunspots, that the seeds for solar storms are sown. Sunspots are dark, cooler regions on the surface of the sun that are caused by intense magnetic activity. These sunspots, which can be many times the size of Earth, are the primary source of solar flares and coronal mass ejections. As magnetic activity builds up in a sunspot, it can release massive amounts of energy into space, sending shockwaves of charged particles hurtling toward Earth. In May 2024, scientists closely monitored the sunspot known as AR 3664. This sunspot was not just large, it was one of the most powerful and largest sunspots ever observed. At its peak, it was estimated that this sunspot was 15 times the size of Earth, making it a truly massive and dangerous feature of the sun. As AR 3664 grew in size, it became increasingly likely that it would trigger a solar flare or coronal mass ejection that could have serious consequences for Earth. These particles travel at tremendous speeds, reaching Earth in as little as 30 minutes during an extreme solar flare, although in most cases, they take 1 to 3 days to reach our planet. By May 2024, AR 3664 had grown to an enormous size, and scientists knew that it had the potential to cause a major geomagnetic storm. When the first particles from this sunspot began to arrive at Earth, they created spectacular auroras visible as far south as Europe, Hawaii, and Australia. These auroras, caused by the interaction of solar wind with Earth's magnetosphere, were a beautiful and eerie spectacle. But behind this stunning light show, there was an underlying threat. If the storm had been stronger or more direct, the results could have been far more destructive. In fact, the storm's intensity reached levels considered severe and extreme by scientists, comparable to the catastrophic event of 1859 known as the Carrington Event. The Carrington Event of 1859 is a key event in the history of solar storms. Named after British astronomer Richard Carrington, who observed the solar flare that triggered the event, this massive geomagnetic storm was the largest and most powerful solar storm ever recorded. The event had a profound impact on Earth, especially in North America and Europe. The solar particles that were ejected from the sun during this event reached Earth in just 20 minutes, a remarkably fast arrival time. As a result, telegraph systems across the United States and Europe were knocked offline. Telegraph poles caught fire, and some operators reported receiving electric shocks from their equipment. In some cases, telegraph systems continued to operate despite being disconnected from their power sources, driven only by the electric charge of the solar particles. The Carrington Event of 1859 demonstrated the power of solar storms and their potential to disrupt human civilization. At the time, the most advanced technology on Earth was the telegraph, a system that relied on electrical currents to send messages over long distances. But even with this relatively simple technology, the effects of a solar storm were profound. Wires caught fire, equipment malfunctioned, and people were forced to reckon with the idea that the sun, the very source of life on Earth, could also be the cause of massive destruction. In the centuries since the Carrington Event, technological advancements have made us increasingly dependent on electricity, satellites, and communication systems. In many ways, we have come to rely on technology so much that we have become blind to the potential risks posed by solar activity. In the aftermath of the May 2024 storm, many experts began to draw parallels between this event and the Carrington Event. While the damage from the May 2024 storm was far less severe than that of 1859, it was still a significant reminder of the dangers posed by solar activity. The fact that modern satellites and communication systems were put under immense stress during the storm shows how vulnerable we have become. In particular, SpaceX's CEO, Elon Musk, posted a diagram showing the load curve of his Starlink satellites, which clearly reached their limit during the storm. Musk was relieved that his satellites were able to withstand the pressure, but the fact that they were tested so severely is a stark reminder of how important it is to monitor solar activity closely. The reason these solar storms are so dangerous is because of their potential to disrupt the Earth's magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is the protective bubble that shields Earth from the harmful effects of solar and cosmic radiation. When a massive solar storm hits, the magnetosphere can become overwhelmed by the influx of charged particles, causing it to collapse. This allows the particles to penetrate deeper into the atmosphere, creating a phenomenon known as geomagnetic storms. These storms can cause a variety of problems, from auroras appearing in regions where they are not typically seen to widespread interference with satellite communications, GPS systems, and even power grids. In extreme cases, a geomagnetic storm could cause power outages that last for days or even weeks. Power grids, which are vulnerable to surges caused by solar storms, could be damaged or destroyed by the influx of charged particles. The high-energy radiation from solar storms can also damage the electronics in satellites, leaving them unable to function properly. Airlines have to reroute flights to avoid flying over polar regions, where radiation levels are highest. And the increased radiation from solar storms can pose a health risk to astronauts and high-flying aircraft passengers. In the years since the Carrington Event, scientists have made significant progress in understanding solar storms and their potential impacts on Earth. The current solar cycle, Cycle 25, began in 2019 and is expected to reach its peak in 2025. This means that we can expect more solar storms in the coming months, with the possibility of even stronger events. As we approach the peak of this solar cycle, the sun will continue to be a source of both beauty and danger. While the auroras caused by solar storms are awe-inspiring, they also serve as a reminder of the immense power of the sun and the vulnerability of our modern world. It is important to recognize that solar storms are a natural part of the sun's life cycle. The sun experiences regular cycles of activity, known as solar cycles, that last about 11 years. During these cycles, the number of sunspots increases and decreases, leading to periods of heightened solar activity. The current solar cycle, which is nearing its peak, has already produced some of the most intense solar flares and coronal mass ejections observed in recent years. As the sun continues to cycle through periods of high and low activity, the threat of solar storms remains a constant concern. Although scientists can predict solar activity to some extent, the sun is still a largely unpredictable force. While we can observe the development of sunspots and monitor solar flares, we cannot always predict exactly when or where a massive storm will strike. That's why monitoring the sun is so critical. Organizations like NASA and the European Space Agency closely monitor solar activity, issuing warnings when a potential solar storm is approaching. Governments, power companies, airlines, and satellite operators all rely on these warnings to prepare for the potential impacts of solar storms. With each passing year, we become more aware of the risks posed by solar activity, and the importance of being prepared for future events. The events of May 2024 serve as a stark reminder of the power of the sun and the potential dangers of solar storms. While we were fortunate that the storm caused only minor disruptions, it is clear that the threat is real and ongoing. The sun's activity will continue to pose a risk to our modern civilization, and we must remain vigilant in monitoring solar storms and preparing for their potential impact. The next few years will be critical as the solar cycle reaches its peak and the risk of more intense storms grows. In the face of this threat, we must continue to innovate and develop technologies that can withstand the immense forces of the sun, ensuring that we are better prepared for the solar storms of the future. As we look toward the future, it is essential to recognize that the sun is both a life giver and a potential destroyer. While its warmth and light sustain life on Earth, its storms can wreak havoc on our technological infrastructure. The events of May 2024, though minor compared to the potential dangers, serve as a timely reminder of the power of the sun and the need to remain vigilant. It is up to us to understand and prepare for the risks posed by solar storms, ensuring that we can continue to thrive in the face of this unpredictable cosmic force. The future of our technological world depends on it.